Hey, it's me, Christi. So, what's this video about? Well, I just kind of wanted to share something with you that I've done here just recently. And it just involves going to a little local market here in my hometown area of Maui and doing a little in-person show. And the reason I wanted to share it with you is twofold. The process itself is kind of fun for somebody just to kind of wonder, like, how does one go about such a thing? But I also think it's great for any of you creatives that are anticipating, like, selling your work, or, you know, how does that translate in your own head of what you may or may not want to do. Now, I used to do lots of shows. I went to multiple art shows, bead shows. You know, it was a whole thing. I never did nearly as many as some people do. Some people's show schedule is, I don't even know how they kept up with it. But, you know, I used to do multiple shows a year, right? But then I stopped before COVID and haven't done a thing outside of the internet since then. And I really had no desire to. I felt like, you know, I had done that and it was good. There was wonderful things about it, but I wasn't like really needing to do that. I had enough stuff and have enough stuff going on with all my online folks. But I was down at my favorite little coffee shop here in Maui. I'm in the Kihei side of Maui. And I was chatting to one of the gals that works in the complex, who's very behind the scenes on the local marketplace that is there once a week. And she was saying, hey, we're doing a third Thursday art market. I'm like, huh. And at that moment, I thought, I think I might want to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a wonderful little complex. It's small, it's cozy, big tree, so it's really pleasant. And two, I thought, you know, this particular event is not stressful. It's only once a month. Why don't I give it a shot? It might just be a hoot to kind of hang out with other artisans, interact in person with people. It's been a while. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do that because I haven't felt like wanting to for quite some time. So the reason I mention that to you guys is, you know, it makes a good story, but also many of you struggle with what to do about selling your creativity. And that's a whole big subject, which we'll talk about. But I just want you all to know, as I'm kind of leading into this whole big thing, that there is no need ever to sell your work. If that's not something that you need to do or want to do, don't feel like you have to do. That is not the measure of your success. However, I do sell my work as a large portion of my creative life. And I thought, what the heck, let's give it a try. So what I'm doing here in this little video is I'm just going to walk you through the whole process of what I was thinking about, what I did to make it happen, and then, you know, leading up to the event itself. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, I don't want to just make things that I think will sell to sort of touristy stuff. I don't want to do, you know, Maui whales or turtles. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because of course people love to take home something from the place that they are. It's very meaningful. But I thought, I don't need another job. I only want to do what amuses me, because if I choose to come back and do this, you know, once a month for however short or long it amuses me, I want people to remember and come back because they want to see my weird Christi things, not because it's like, where was that place where we could get the turtle? Oh, everywhere there's turtles. Which one are you talking about? You know, like I said, I want to stand out a little bit. Plus also, it's more amusing for me to do something that's uniquely mine and different. So, as many of you know, I create what I've normally referred to as my Glowinthedark Ghoulies, but I've since broadened that phrase for many reasons to weirdlings, because they're not always glow in the dark, and anyway, and they're not always, you know, scary. Sometimes they're mer creatures, sometimes there's cats, you know, so the weirdlings kind of covers everything. And I thought that's got a more universal appeal anyway. So I've kind of like said, okay, I think what I'll do is I will make a table full of these little weirdlings. I will only make things that amuse me, and I'll turn them into like little groupings, because I love the idea of making sort of like a diorama, you know, where you're making like little accessories in a little set for them to live in. That's something that goes back way into my childhood from our school days when we had to do dioramas for school. Those of you of a certain age will remember those times. And I always loved that. It was like my favorite. I got the old glue gun out, and just had great memories of all that. So I thought, why don't I do that? So I thought, okay, the theme of this particular event was going to be Halloween. They were going to have a kids' costume party, the whole thing. So anything that you could bring that was Halloween-y was encouraged. And I thought, well, some of these glow-in-the-dark ones will work perfect for that because, of course, I love to make glow-in-the-dark things. And I thought, why not make a magical marketplace? I had all these little glass bottles, which you'll see here shortly, that look like little potion bottles. So I'll make a whole bunch of potion merchants that have their own section of the magical marketplace. And then what else would be at a magical marketplace? There's people that are selling creatures, like magical creatures. Yeah, let's have a little section of those. And just to round it off, how about the crystal vendors? They got a couple of powerful crystals. So that was enough to get started with and give me plenty to work with, which I have to say, I don't know where you all are at in your creativity. Sometimes it's a little thing you can do in between all the stuff you have to do if you've got a family or you have a job or people you're caring for, and it's a little bit that you can squeeze in here and there. That's great. If that's where you're at, that's terrific. Others, it's a full-time job. You're doing it because you need to earn the money from it, so you are in production mode. Also, very wonderful and fine. I'm in that weird stage where it is my livelihood, but I've also kind of really worked on making what I do as my livelihood also amuse me, which I highly recommend. Because if you wake up in the morning and you go, ooh, I get to make a glow-in-the-dark potion seller's marketplace, that's a good day. So I'm going to show you first is we're going to walk through the process very briefly of how I make the clay blends using polymer clay, how I make these little guys, and then we'll kind of look at some of the ways that I put it together, and then I'll bring you to the setup and all the way up to the beginnings of the show. But it's kind of a fun process for anybody who's never been on that side of the table to kind of see what's involved. And I loved being able to do something that's different, unique, fun, very kind of tongue-in-cheek humor, which is my style anyway. So I had a blast with that and imagining what some of the different potions were. So I had more fun than I should have if you were just kind of like going to write it all down as a math formula. Like, how much time did you spend versus how much money will it make? That math didn't work. But I already knew this going in because I used to do this all the time, and I still am of this opinion, is that for me, and I recommend that if you can set it up like this, it's kind of nice. For me, if I go into an event where I'm selling something and the only measure of success for that event is how much I sell, I am going to be disappointed most of the time. For a number of reasons. I mean, there were times when shows that I did, they were absolutely moneymakers and there was math involved and we figured all the angles. But so often when you go to a show, you've got the expense of making the thing, then you've got to haul it down or set things up, the booth fees, etc. It's very difficult to make it feel financially successful. So you got to play a little tricks with this. So I always look at all of this stuff as advertisement. I'm interacting with people as a way to introduce them to me and what I have going on, and I'm giving them something to find me online afterwards. And so I'm always looking at it as a way to interact with everybody. And then if there are sales on top of that, that's a bonus. So if you can kind of look at it like that a little bit, that's great. At some point, you have to decide, can you keep doing that? Is it worth it? But, at least that helps set your brain up for a different measure of success. So I'm mentioning that because many of you are in the marketing of things, you're in the selling, you're doing little shows or big shows, and it's, a thing we think about, right, as creatives, trying to figure out how to do this for a living. Okay, so we're going to make some creatures. I'm going to show you the things. I'm going to explain what I did and what my choices were, and hopefully it will amuse you. Okay, let's go take a look. I have several videos here on my channel on how to make little glow-in-the-dark creatures, little weirdlings, little worlds. So if you're interested in more of the process for yourself, because you'd like to make some too, I highly encourage it. It's super fun. You would love it. and just check out those videos and see if they give you some inspiration. But I will just go over just briefly my particular materials of choice. I like to use polymer clay, and I like the Sculpey products. I use primarily Primo, and the Primo line and the Sculpey line both have a glow in the dark. And as you can tell, there's a slight bit of difference in the color. I like the firmness of this one, but it tends to get a little bit more snot-like, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it just has a little bit more of a kind of a snot-like color when it's baked, whereas this one's got a bright and vibrant glow in the darkiness, but it's very soft and a little bit kind of mushy. So when I mix them both together in equal proportions, it's perfect. So it's some sort of a weird Primo Sculpey hybrid, which I love. And then I also throw in always a chunk of this Primo Gray Granite. It's a translucent clay that has little black flecks and gray flecks in it. And as you can see, when that mixes all together, it just gives you all these little speckles in there, which I find delightful. It allows me to not have to worry about it being pristine, or if some speck gets in there, oh no, yeah, the whole thing's got specks. It's all good. So I have that. I use some sculpting tools. You can find these on my site. If you're looking for some starting tools, these are the best. And I have a whole bunch of little glass eyeballs because I make a lot of creatures and I need a lot of eyes. So this is my setup. And then I just basically let the creatures make themselves. Like I said, I've got other videos to kind of walk you through that process. But the essence of all of this is I'm just going to take a chunk and I'm just going to warm it up in my hands. Polymer clay is a heat curing clay. And if you're brand new to this, there's lots of information out there on how to use polymer clay. But essentially, you can just keep playing with it and playing with it to your heart's content. And then when you are ready, you can bake it, and that's what makes it harden. So I start off with kind of an oval shape so that it can stand up. I don't bother making legs usually. I don't feel like it. These little creatures are just lumps, frankly. When I do the Merlings, I create tails for them. The cats also have tails of a different sort. But when I do these main little weirdlings, I don't. And essentially my biggest thing is sort of trying to figure out what his eyes are, you know, what that situation is. And I use these little glass eyes because glass can go right into the oven and bake without any problem. It's not going to melt or do anything weird. So I would suggest you always use stone or glass or crystal or metal, you know, that kind of thing, so that can go in the oven, not plastic. So I put his eyes on first, and then I try to decide what else is happening. Does he have ears? Does he have horns? You know what the fun thing about this? I've made these little creatures since I was a kid. And I have really come to love everything about making them. They are silly and simple. They could be deemed as sort of kind of, you know, childish art in a way. But I love the fact that each one of these things can have different personalities depending on what I do with them and how I play with their features and stuff. So you never quite know who they're going to be until they become that thing. And I like to just sort of wait and see what the clay wants to be. It's kind of an interesting process because I don't put a whole lot of thought into this because I've made so many of them that I know the basic process, and I just kind of let it flow. And for those of you who, as a creative, get into that flow state, you know how nice that is, just to have everything be working like effortlessly. You lose track of time and your sense of body awareness. You know, you might reemerge from your trance-like state a couple of hours later being thirsty and hungry and needing to go to the bathroom and need to move your legs because you just get so deep into the process that it just takes over everything else. And I think that is an exceptionally delightful thing. So I just kind of go with it and see what it does by itself and see who it wants to be. So it usually is a matter of like creating a mouth, creating eyes, you know, just figuring out who he is and what he want or she wants to be, and what do they have to say for themselves. It's just really neat. And every one of them is different. I don't want ever to make the same thing twice. I do limited edition sometimes, in which case they're all going to be similar. And those are the only exception I make for, repeating myself pretty much, because life can be short, so you don't want to just get bored, right? So have all kinds of fun making however you want your thing to be, and that amuses you. And so I find these to amuse me quite a bit. So once I get all the basic features, and that's just a quick little rough kind of thing there, is I'll reach into my powders, and I have lots of videos on the powders too. So, whatever it is you want to know about this process, I've got a video to watch, and I recommend you watch them all, you subscribe, like them all, comment if you want, all that stuff. And I use the powders to kind of add all of the fun little details. Some people use the clay to create a lot of details, and that is super great. But I like using the powder because it can give me like gradients and little nuances and such, which is kind of fun. So we've got a kind of an interesting little face situation going on. Let me give him some peachy cheeks here a little bit, and maybe on his lower lip there, so he gets a little bit of cuteness amongst his very concerned face. And then probably he needs a little bit of blue up in his hornular area. And I just kind of let it flow and figure out, what I want it to be as I go along, and I don't think about it too much. But that's because I've been making these for a very long time. So when you are starting out, you might have to think about the process in a different way, and that is okay. But just, especially with these little guys, since they don't have to be anything, just let them take you off into their own little universe. And everything is about those little features, like when you tuck his head, look at how much different that looks than if it was just straight on. It just adds just that little bit of personality. So on something like this, where it's going to be maybe a potion vendor or whatever, then I'd make little hands and add his potion. If he was going to be one of the crystal vendors, and I'd get a nice crystal to have him hold, and we just kind of continue the process until he was fully formed. And then once I've made a crop of these, then they bake. And if you're curious about that, I have a separate video here on the channel about baking polymer clay, so you can check that out. All right, that's the process. So obviously I used this process to make the glow-in-the-dark creatures, but then there was I made cats, I made Merlings, which are a mer creature, out of different kinds of clay, not all glow-in-the-darks, just, mixing in the same way, but with different colors. Okay, so this pan of weirdlings just came out of the oven, which is always so exciting, just to see if everything made it good, everything looks good, the color always changes just a little bit. And then what I want to do with all of this stuff is, as I take each one out, I've got a little brush, and I just kind of clean off the eyes, because sometimes there's just like the leftover powder on there, which means they're not going to be as adorable. So I'll do that to anybody that needs eyeball cleaning. So these are all part of the magical marketplace. And I use a little bit of liquid polymer clay to make the spilled potion here, but it doesn't stick permanently to the tile, but it needs a little help getting off to break the grip. So most of these are good just exactly as they are, but some of them are going to require having their potion bottles filled up. So I'm kind of getting the ones that are done out of the way so I can see what I have left. Next, we're going to kind of figure out what goes in these potion bottles. So I made each of these different creatures. They were all, baked, and then comes the fun after everything's made of kind of deciding what kind of universe they're going to inhabit. And this, for me, is where it got really fun, because now I got to get out scraps of fabric, chopsticks, pieces of stick, shells, little glue guns and epoxy clays to put things together, little bits and pieces just to create these little worlds and these little settings. So here's some of those. So in making little display thrones, settings, little teeny worlds that the Merlings can sit in, because Merlings are sea creatures, of course, and they create little things out of shells and such. So the first thing I've got to do is create them for them. So I go through, I've got all kinds of different shells from all over the place, and I kind of go through those and find stuff that's going to work together to create different little settings. So I've got some driftwood combinations. I'm going to use some pearls and some. I use sand to kind of cover some of the bits and pieces of the assembly part. But first of all, it's kind of like getting all the stuff and then seeing who fits where and, how they might end up, and then starting to assemble them once I've got all the components. So I use an epoxy clay to make the putty that will cement together my different shell bits. So one of the things I decided that I wanted to do as well, and this goes to something that I've talked about before. There's other videos here on my channel about these little worlds. And one of the things I love sharing with people is getting you involved. Like, I'll make a little creature, but then you're going to take it home and add to its environment. So you're going to take my little creature, bring it home, and set up your own little world. So I envision when I make them, I have some dish, or I'll put sand in it or driftwood, and then set up my guys and just sort of make an interesting little setup with that, right? So I thought, well, why don't I make it easy for people to imagine themselves doing that? And it's also a little extra revenue stream, and put all these little groupings of things that people could buy to accessorize their little creature. So that was something that I did. I got, all my ingredients there. I got it all set up, and I'm, which shells am I going to use? Am I going to have a little vial of precious, stone chips, or, some amber that could go inside a potion bottle? All those little things, all the little bits and pieces that could add to the little creature that you chose to live in your world. And additionally, I happen to have stickers, and a number of the stickers were of these little glow-in-the-dark creatures, or, the different weirdlings. So I put together some little sticker packets too. It's nice to have a variety. If you get too much stuff, people can get a little overwhelmed, but it's nice to have a variety of things, because if one thing doesn't appeal to somebody, they might look at another and go, oh, I like that. And you know how that goes, is once you have chosen to get something, you've opened up your mind to the possibility of, like, well, I'm already spending some money. What else do I want here? So that's a nice thing. It's kind of giving that person an easier way to transition into buying something that they like. So anyway, I did that. I put together a whole bunch of interesting accessories. All right, so now's the part where I wanted to see if this was all coming together. So I made all these little things. I allowed myself several days to just play, not to do any of my other work, ignored my emails and my online obligations and other things that I probably should have done. But I just kind of put them off for a couple of days so my brain could be fully in the flow of this whole crazy process. So I got out a table, set it up in the middle of the living room, and brought all of the bits and pieces there. And I kind of laid it out and saw, like, which little display bowls that I needed, and how would this set up, and what did I have that would work. A couple of trips down to the thrift store to see if they had any neat little bowls or trays, or, things to use in my display. And I laid it all out. I had a 6-foot table at home. Maybe it wasn't even 6 foot. It might have only been a 4-foot. It was a short table. I think it was a 4-foot table. And it was crammed. And I thought, ooh, it's a little bit crowded here. But I think they're going to be 6-foot tables when I go to the event, which they provided the tables, which is lovely. And so it's going to be fine. So when I got there, it was actually an 8-foot table. So I really got to kind of spread out and give everything a little bit more room. But this was a really great part of the process for me, because often I am flying by the seat of my pants, trying to get everything done at the last second out the door and hope it all comes together when I get to the venue. That was my previous pre-COVID life. But since then, I've gotten older and slowed down a bit and gotten into this island rhythm. And I don't do that as much as I used to. I take a little bit longer on things, or I try to allow myself more time, or not bite off more than I can chew. It's a work in progress. I still don't have my act together, but my act is becoming a little bit more close to together. So I spread everything out on the table and thought, yeah, I think this is going to work. And I was done a day early, which is a new record for me. Right. Okay, so here's something else I don't usually do either. I thought, well, I already know the venue, but why don't I just go down there a day early and kind of take a look around and just sort of see. Because I've gone down there, but I haven't gone down there with the eyes of like, where would I want to be? Where would I want to be set up? How would I want to do this? Is there anything I need to know? So, jumped in the car, headed on over. There you go. Awesome. I'm finished setting up. That's hot work. Want to see it? Okay, so everything is set up. People will start showing up shortly. And everything is ready to enjoy interacting with people as they look at my crazy world and want to know why I make what I make. And who knows, it's just going to be an interesting evening.